This is the Tokheim 5-speed bicycle transmission. By the way, it's got an unusual saddle on it that I have another video on YouTube about called the Bummer. The Tokheim was manufactured by the Tokheim Corporation. They made gasoline pumps, and this was made between 1974 and 1980. To the best of my knowledge, it is no longer being manufactured. It has 5 speeds operated by a single shrouded cable going to a twist grip, and the twist grip is indexed 1 through 5. And it works very, very well. It was sold for the most part by the Huffy Bicycle Corporation, and it is a little bit heavier than a derailleur, but it is about the same weight as a 5-speed Sturmey Archer. It uses regular chain. The chain is not thin. The chain does not move from left to right, so it does not derail from cog to cog. Instead, it makes 5 different size cogs piecemeal. If you take a look at any bicycle, there is a loop of chain that goes around the back, and it makes contact around the top, the back, and the bottom. But between here and here, there is no contact, and it is in this area that the cogs are manufactured piecemeal by pushing 2 tooth segments in and out. They are laterally interposed. At the bottom, there's a take-up cage that reminds you very much of a derailleur. And then there's this massive plate. It works very, very well. In fact, it works better than a derailleur in one sense. If you are at the bottom of a hill and about to go up the hill with a derailleur, you've got a problem if you're in top gear. With this one, you can be standing up on the pedals in top gear. This is in the lowest gear, but when it's in the smallest cog, and you can downshift from any gear to any gear. You can go from 1 to 5, 5 to 1 immediately, and the gear shifting mechanism works without hindrance, whether you're moving or if you're stopped. Of course, it doesn't shift. It actually doesn't shift until you are moving. However, you can shift from 5 to 1, and it will, without binding or clashing, shift immediately down to 1. Any gear to any gear. There is an advantage to this thing, because if you are at a light and the light turns from red to green and you're in first gear, when you shift from 1 to 2 after about 1 revolution, you're not actually immediately from 1 to 2. You're somewhere in between, because these cogs make less than a perfect circle. And I can cross a light faster than any derailleur with this. It's a sort of a drag racer. I must say that I don't know why it went out of business. They tried reviving it in 1985. The Facet Corporation had a deal with Bendix Springs, and this particular bicycle was made up in the early 80s and sent to JCPenney in New York City, but it did not sell. I have the blueprints. I'm donating this bicycle, along with many other unusual mechanical bicycles, to the Houston Bicycle Museum. I've got another video about this saddle. It's called the Bummer, and it's a sling type saddle which flexes, and you can sit anywhere on it. My name is Pop, and I thank you very, very much. Here's a short addendum. This is the actual blueprint for the Tokheim. When it was manufactured in the late 70s, the mid to late 70s, it was made out of sintered metal. And that's a process where they take iron filings and compress them and then weld them together. And then you've got a large block of metal that is actually lighter than if it had been made out of solid metal. Today, of course, it could be made by means of 3D printing. I've got the very first one that I owned here, a letter from Huffy. The Huffy rep sent it to me after they had ceased selling them. They had a few left over. There are many brochures that I've got, and owners' manuals, and parts lists, and reports in Bicycling Magazine. Bicycling Magazine was very enthusiastic about it. This particular article was written by Eugene Sloan, who wrote a very famous book about bicycling during the very first bicycle boom of 1970. And in fact, the very first edition of his book has in it an entire chapter devoted to the Tokheim. And then in later editions of the book, that was withdrawn. Thank you very much. My name is Pop.